The case of the missing socialite. Prologue. The city of London was in a state of panic, as news of the disappearance of Miss Isabella Rodriguez, a well-known socialite, spread like wildfire. The young woman, barely in her 20s, had vanished into thin air, leaving behind no clues as to her whereabouts. Detective Inspector Edward Thompson, a seasoned investigator with the Metropolitan Police, was at his wits' end trying to solve the case. Despite his best efforts, he was no closer to finding Miss Rodriguez than he was on the day she disappeared. It was at this point that he turned to the one man he knew could solve the case, James Moriarty, the renowned consulting detective. Chapter 1. James Moriarty was a man of peculiar habits and quirks. He spent his days locked away in his study, surrounded by books and scientific equipment, lost in thought as he worked on solving the most complex cases. When Thompson arrived at his home, he found Moriarty in his usual position, sprawled out on the couch with a microscope in hand.
Moriarty, we have a problem,
Thompson said as he burst into the room.
Miss Rodriguez has vanished, and the police are at a loss as to how to find her.
Moriarty raised an eyebrow and set down the microscope.
Tell me more, Thompson. The details are always key in a case like this.
Thompson proceeded to give Moriarty all the information he had gathered on the case so far. Miss Rodriguez had been seen last at a society event, and no one had seen or heard from her since. Her family was beside themselves with worry, and the press was having a field day with the story.
Interesting,
Moriarty said, his mind already racing with possibilities.
I'll take the case. But we'll need to gather more information before we can make any progress. I'll need to visit the scene of the crime and speak to the victim's family. Quote.
Chapter 2. Moriarty and Thompson set out for the Rodriguez mansion, a grand estate on the outskirts of London. As they arrived, they were greeted by the victim's mother, Mrs. Rodriguez, a stately woman with a worried expression on her face.
Please, Mr. Moriarty, you must find my daughter,
she said, her voice shaking with emotion.
She's all I have left.
Moriarty nodded sympathetically and set to work examining the mansion for clues. He scanned the room with his keen eyes, taking in every detail.
Thompson, do you see anything out of the ordinary?
He asked. Thompson scanned the room and shook his head.
Nothing, Moriarty. It's all perfectly ordinary.
Moriarty frowned.
Then we must look harder. Miss Rodriguez didn't just vanish into thin air. There must be some clue here, some evidence of what happened to her.
Chapter 3. As the investigation continued, Moriarty and Thompson began to uncover a web of deceit and danger surrounding Miss Rodriguez's disappearance. They learned that she had received a number of threatening letters in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, and that she had confided in a friend that she was afraid for her life. But who would want to harm the innocent young socialite, and why? As they delved deeper into the case, they began to suspect that Miss Rodriguez's fiancé, a wealthy businessman named Richard Davis, might be involved in her disappearance. But before they could confront him, they received a tip that Miss Rodriguez had been seen in a seedy part of town known for its criminal underworld. Determined to find Miss Rodriguez and bring her home safely, Moriarty and Thompson set out for the rough neighborhood, their nerves on edge as they braved the dangers of the streets. As they arrived at the dingy hotel where Miss Rodriguez was rumored to be staying, they were met with resistance from the shady characters that lurked in the shadows. But Moriarty was undaunted, using his quick wit and clever deductions to outmaneuver the criminals and rescue Miss Rodriguez from the clutches of danger. In the end, It was Moriarty's sharp mind and relentless determination that brought the perpetrator to justice and returned Miss Rodriguez safely to her relieved family. And once again, the great detective had proven that no mystery was too difficult for him to solve.